Hello and welcome back to the sideboard here at the Star City Games Open Series in Indianapolis, Indiana. My name is Ruben Bressler and I am joined by Brandon Czosnowski.
Yep.
Am I saying that right?
That's right.
From South Bend, Indiana. And your deck caught my eye and I really wanted to bring it to people's attention because, there's a lot of burn decks you describe as aggro, control, mid-range, devotion. This one has a different word after the colors. This is red, white, black, burn.
Right.
Very burn heavy. How many burn spells do you have in the deck? Something like 18 or 20?
22.
22? That's quite a few.
Yeah.
You have the full amount of War Leader's Helix, Skullcrack, Boros Charm, 4 Shocks,
Yes.
Lightning Strike, and Magma Jet. So 24.
24 is right, yeah.
So you have all 4s of those, and then also to round out the rest of the deck, you just have Chain to the Rocks and 2 copies of Chandras Pyromancer, along with your suite of creatures. But we'll get to the creatures in a second. But I want to talk about why you decided to just go with Burn as the way to play in this tournament.
Well, the way I feel the metagame is right now, I feel like it's very spot removal heavy with the Tension Sphere, Supreme Verdict. Everything is just wipe the board, get rid of your permanents, and if you don't have any permanents, they just have dead cards game 1. Or game 2 or 3, you can't board out all of them.
Right, your opponent's hands are just full of Devour Fleshes and Heroes Downfalls and Cyclonic Rifts or whatever.
Right.
And if you're playing a completely different game, it doesn't really matter. Either they're clearing your board or they're exploding onto the board with like Nykthos, like Burning Tree fueled Nykthoses and things like that. So it just is playing an entirely different game of Magic.
Yes.
And the creatures that you do have are really good at avoiding combat. One of them has flying, and one of them is a bunch of bodies.
Right.
So I'm going to start with the one that has flying, which is Chandras Phoenix. Has been popular here and there. It's good in the regular mono red aggro decks. It serves a slightly different purpose here because it's able to chump block really effectively in your deck as well. Talk to me about Chandras Phoenix.
Chandras Phoenix, it's a recurring threat. It's tough to deal with. It has haste. Your opponent's ever tapped out, it's always going to hit them for 2. They end up debating, especially in game 1, they debate whether or not to remove it because they're waiting for something else to kill. And eventually they take an 8 damage and they have to start killing it. By that time I have so much mana that's irrelevant.
Right, and obviously it goes really well with your Pyromasters.
Right.
Being able to constantly recur them.
Yep.
The other creature is Young Pyromancer. We have Pyromaster, and then you have Pyromancer.
Right.
Young Pyromancer makes a ton of guys in your deck because you have the full 24 burn spells.
Right.
And so you're able to flood the board with either chump blockers or just make a bunch of 1/1s.
Right.
And if you have 5 1/1s and your opponent has 2 3/3s, you're still dealing with a bunch of damage.
Right, exactly.
And so Young Pyromancer has been really good for you today?
Oh yeah. He's actually, it seems odd, but I actually feel like he's one of the weaker cards in the deck because a lot of cards like Red-Green Devotion has like Lucranos and things to just wipe the board and wipe the floor with him. But he really shows up in like other aggro matches, any Orzhov match, or even Heroic Red. He's an all-star.
Sure.
Especially combined with Boros Charm. You're looking down Fiend Slayer Paladin, you can block him all day with Boros Charm and that guy and block something else while you're at it.
Yeah, that's pretty good. They're able to attack with their Fiend Slayer, and you're able to Boros Charm, make a token, choose Indestructible, and block the Fiend Slayer Paladin.
Exactly.
That's pretty tricky.
Oh, yeah.
I like that a lot.
Yeah. It also, it's really good in control. If you turn 4, you drop a Pyromancer, they see it immediately, panic, and cast Supreme Verdict, you cast a Boros Charm, now you have extra power, and just swing it next turn.
Yeah, it seems like it's not an early drop in your deck. You can easily play it on turn 5 or 6.
Right.
And it's still a threat because you have so many burn spells.
Exactly. It feels kind of like Pack Rats, where you can drop it turn 2 and just start getting value off of it right away. It really just depends on the matchup you're playing, though.
Nice. And your sideboard is pretty tricky. One card that I walked by you a couple times, and it was in both matchups, and great in both matchups, was Toil and Trouble.
Right.
And so this is part of the black splash that you have in your sideboard. Talk to me about Toil and Trouble and what its purpose is.
Toil and Trouble, it's for obviously anything that will run Sphinx's Revelation or Divination even. If they play Divination turn 3 and I trouble them just for the trouble side, that's 7 damage right there. It's just really early damage. It's great late game if they tap out. If you tap out to play Helix or something during your main phase, they're probably going to tap out for Revelation just to make sure that they can cast it without getting skull cracked. And if you have 6 mana open, that's 11 damage to the control player.
There you go, yeah. It's also really good that you can sign in blood yourself in those control matchups where each individual burn spell needs to be that much more effective. Each card you draw can be that much less effective,
Right.
so it gives you a lot more freedom.
Right.
So
Exactly.
you can draw 2 and still deal them 4. It's also really good at Planeswalker control. You know, if they've got like something on 6 and you just need
Right.
to get rid of it,
Exactly.
it's able to take care of that. You have 2 other split cards in your sideboard. One of them's Profit Loss,
Yes.
which when I saw, I was like, that's not a card. That's not a burn spell.
Yeah, it's
what are you doing?
It's awfully surprising. Really, I put it in there after playtesting on a Friday night. I ran into Orzhov, Little Orzhov. All of their 1 toughness guys are just annoying,
Right.
as well as Red Heroic. All of their 1 toughness guys really annoying. And with Young Pyromancer, it actually combos very well. It can wipe the board with just the loss, and from Profit, you can double your damage in a turn.
Right, it also takes care of Master of Waves.
Oh,
which I'm
exactly,
sure is a
yes,
little bit of
yes.
a problem.
Yeah.
And it also answers your opponent's Golgari charms
Yes.
and stuff like that. So that's a pretty good one. The last one's Wear and Tear, fairly self-explanatory, but it also completes the triad
Right.
of the split cards in your sideboard. You also have some sweepers in your sideboard. You have Anger of the Gods and Mizium Warders, which are cards you wouldn't expect to be in a red deck,
Right.
considering that usually the traditional red deck is playing like Ash Selling, things
Right.
like that. But Anger of the Gods really works well in your deck because you're not really on the board at all.
And if it turns out to be a late game thing, this actually happened earlier. I had 2 Young Pyromancers, like 8 tokens of the elemental tokens playing against Orzhov. Played Anger of the Gods and a Boros Charm. Wipe their board, I get extra tokens, and I just swing in for the win.
There you go. That works pretty well. Well, this deck looks great. Burn is always one of my favorite strategies because it just plays on a different level.
Right.
And in Standard, you don't really have the usually you don't have the critical mass of good burn spells that you need to be able to do it, but it appears as if there is the critical mass of burn spells to be able to do it. So you're 2-1 right now. I'll be keeping an eye on you throughout the rest of the tournament. Brandon Czosnowski.
That's right.
All right. I did it right again. I'm so proud of myself. We'll keep an eye on you through the rest of the tournament. Thanks for joining me in the sideboard. And we'll be back here at SCG Indianapolis with Cedric Phillips, Patrick Sullivan, and myself.